Jackson Holzer joining us now. Jackson, what's up? Good to hear from you. How are things?
How are we doing, guys? And I promise I don't bite.
All right. Well, it's to each his own.
All right. So I'm sure you saw yesterday, the Mike Waters released that article about NIL. And as it pertains to Syracuse, it kind of took us through last year's offseason leading up to, year number 2 for him as the head coach. I'm sure you read it. What are your thoughts? What are your reactions to said article?
I had a lot of reactions. I want to start off talking about Kadari Richmond. Does that sound good with you all?
Mm-hmm. We were just talking about it. Go ahead.
Right. So he was offered $700,000 at the very end of the offseason, according to this article. I don't understand how they just had all that money just lying around, unless it's to your point, which is there was someone who was willing to donate that only for Kadari Richmond.
Yeah, I would assume that would be the case, because the donor probably doesn't watch tape of smaller schools, and he knew who Kadari was.
And Kadari had a relationship with the university already, and maybe had a relationship with the donor.
I think what the university needs to do is they need to start pitching these players better, because you can get really good players from mid-major schools. That's one thing. That's a narrative they want to attack or debunk right now, that you shouldn't go after mid-major players. There are so many mid-major players around the country that enter the portal and end up being phenomenal at their new schools. I mean, one example I can bring up to you right now is the 2 centers over at Michigan. Danny Wolf, Vladislav Golden are both terrific players over there. Chaz Lanier is one of the best players in the country. He came from Immortal UNF. So if you have this money that is available, you have to be able to also convince these donors that, hey, we might not be able to get Kadari Richmond for $700,000. That's not even going to be close to enough. But we can get these other guys from mid-major schools that maybe you've never heard of, but we promise you they are good.
Yeah, and I think that's what a GM will do. That's the GM's job, is to allow them to prove that we can get these guys, and this is what we got on them, right?
Right. I also think that Eddie Lampkin, we learned in the article, is actually pretty good value.
Yeah.
He's making roughly $850,000 according to this report, which is not actually that bad considering the center market, which leads me to my next point about how maybe Syracuse should attack next offseason. You guys can feel free to agree or disagree on this. What if Syracuse basketball, who's already going to be on a tight budget anyway, and they should have more resources regardless because they're going on that Vegas tournament, what if they just don't really get a center in the portal next year? Because if Eddie Lampkin is decent value at $850,000, I think that goes to also show you how overinflated the center market is. The fact that Frank Anselm is worth more money than J.J. Starling, I mean, come on, what are we doing here with the centers?
Yeah, well, the Louisville's got the money to just throw around, because you can then be like, well, our third string center is going to be $400,000 from Georgia. Like Syracuse probably would have been in on Anselm, I'm guessing, but he's not a $400,000 value.
Yeah,
to everybody but Louisville.
Frank Anselm stinks. Frank Anselm hasn't been good no matter where he has been. Louisville, I mean, I get that they have a war chest of money. The article said about $4.5 million, but you don't even. I don't get. I would offer him like $25,000 to ride the bench. You're paying him $300,000 for no reason. That's lighting money on fire. If you're telling me that that's what the market for centers is, even for a lower end guy like Frank Anselm, I don't know if we should be spending all of our NIL resources on a center and instead maybe load up on guards and wings.
Well,
People might find that controversial, but
no, I agree with you.
Such a tight budget.
I had this discussion with Devo and Atan the other day that I think the money should have gone towards a guard because the center position's kind of much different in the game now. But they still need a center next year.
Yeah, and I do think, Jackson, I understand your point. I think the top priority in the offseason is a point guard, a dynamic point guard who could shoot, who could get by his guy, who could defend. I know everybody's looking for those guys, but I think you need to put a lot of your NIL resources into getting that guy because we see how much they miss a guy like that. I also think, and I understand your point about no center, but I think we also see that this team desperately lacks rim protection, and it has been a major problem. And so I think they need someone. I'm not saying you have to spend $850,000 for that, but I think they need someone who can be a defensive presence in the lane because they don't have that right now.
Anybody that will play defense at any position.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, defense is obviously a major issue with this team. But I do think that, they need somebody who can defend the pick and roll and who can, block a shot here and there if, the guards get beaten off the dribble. So, I do think both things are important. I think the point guard position is way more important, but I don't think they can completely ignore the fact that right now they're severely lacking with rim protection.
Here's the thing. Here's where I'm at with the center spot. And I agree with you on point guard being a top priority because they need one. With the center spot, either pay for the top end, the guys who are going to be all conference caliber next year, or simply don't pay them because Syracuse is on such a tight budget. You can't be spent. There is no center out there worth middle of the road money. You're either worth absolutely nothing or you are worth more than anyone in college basketball. So that's why I'm suggesting maybe just load up on guards and wings. Yeah, you might lack in rim protection, which last year they did, but guess what? They won 20 games last year without a center. So maybe that could be the formula going forward for Syracuse basketball. But I think also a lot of people wanted me on this call to talk about coaching, so we can talk about that right now.
Just real quick to wrap up that conversation, you said last year they won 20 games without a true center, but the guy who was playing center, Malik Brown, was actually a really good defender, right? And right now they don't have that.
A forward. He's a forward.
Understood, but my point is they need you can't just not have someone manning the middle. That person has to be a good defender. So whether it's a power forward or a big guy, you need someone to play defense, and I think we're all seeing with this team that they don't play defense in a lot of cases. So that's all I'm saying about the center position. I don't know that you can spend for the top guy, and I think you agree on that. I think that's your point, Jackson, is that you can't go out and get the top of the line center because you're going to blow your entire NIL budget on that. So, use it other places. I agree with that point, but I do think you need somebody in the center to play some defense. All right, moving on to the coaching situation. Paulie and I look at this and, the whole fire red thing, I think we look at it as what is the point of talking about this because it's not going to happen right now. I think all the stars, read between the lines, everything is setting up for he's getting next year, and then, this conversation can be had at the end of next year. What is your take on, I guess, his job status?
I wouldn't give him another year. I do not think he is some coaching wizard, that's for starters. I mean, I think his offense is incredibly stale. I think that the team in 2 years has not played defense. Even having Malik Brown last year, they still didn't play defense. They were the third worst team in the ACC. And also, look, here's the deal. A lot of people are going to say, well, the recruiting class he's got bringing in, right? Kyan Anthony, Sadiq White, even to a lesser extent, Luke Fennell and Aaron Womack. You don't want to lose those guys, and I agree. I don't want to lose them either. What happens? Can we agree on this, right? Let's say they give Adrian Autry a third year. Is it tournament or bust for him?
Yes.
Okay. So what if we're in this similar situation next year? Maybe they're doing better, right? Maybe they're 16-11, but they're probably not going to make the NCAA tournament. But they got Jordan Smith and Alex Constanza coming in the class of 2026. Both are five-star players. Are you then going to switch your expectation and say, let's give Adrian Autry a year 4 because he's got another good recruiting class coming in?
No,
or are you going to pull the plug?
No, there comes a time where you have to blow it up.
I think we saw it with Dino, right? They put an expectation on it. They said, all right, go win 7 again, and that's the benchmark. And he came up short, and they said, okay, sorry, you're done.
Even with Dino, I don't think Dino is a fair comparison because Dino did not have quite the leverage that Autry has because Dino couldn't recruit. There was nothing that Syracuse was missing out on by firing Dino Babers. If you fire Adrian Autry and he's got Alex Constanza and Jordan Smith coming in, well, you might lose those recruits. At some point, you might lose recruits. That's my counter to people who say you need to give him another year because of the recruits coming in. I would rather just pull the plug now and start from scratch.
You say they didn't have leverage with Dino. I mean, they did make back-to-back bowl games for the first time in a really long time. That's his leverage. Is look at where this program was when I got here, and it's better now than it was when I arrived. And, they said, well, this is the benchmark. And he didn't hit the benchmark, and they said, you got to go.
And he did have LaQuinn Allen, Aronde Getz,
Sure.
and Marlo Wax on the team that won 10 this year.
And they were able to retain those guys, and we all know how it played out, and it played out well, and it worked out well, for Syracuse and for Fran Brown and for this fan base. So I don't know, Jackson. I mean, I look at it as, next year there will be, my guess is, I think the finances are in such a way that he's not going anywhere. And, to the point of they hired a GM, and you look at the injuries this year. I think there are a lot of reasons they can point to, and they can justify one more year. But I think that going into that year, there's going to be a clear expectation that this is what you got to do. And if you don't, then we're going to have to move on. And, that's my opinion, and I understand you're saying do it now. I just don't think they're going to do it now.
I agree on that last part. I don't think they're going to do it now, but I think they would have every justification in the world to do it now. Think of it this way also. I get that they do not have the most resources in the world. They are also 146 in the net rankings. 146. Do you want to know what schools are ahead of them in the net rankings?
Yeah, it's not pretty. Yeah.
It's Furman, DePaul, New Mexico State, James Madison that employs Justin Taylor for some reason. I don't know why, but they do. Western Kentucky, Kennesaw State, UC Riverside, Belmont, UTEP, UIC, ETSU. Davidson is ahead of Syracuse. I guess they still have Steph Curry. Louisiana Tech, Kent State. You want me to keep going?
We all know what this year is.
I guess what's your point?
Yeah,
we know it's not good.
Is that if you had a better coach, I guarantee you they are better.
With this roster and injuries, you guarantee everything that's happened this year would be better.
If Will Wade was the head coach of Syracuse basketball right now, they would be 16-11, not 11-16.
With this roster and injuries.
With this roster and these injuries. They weren't good even with everyone healthy.
I know you say that, and I know that's convenient for everybody to keep bringing up. They weren't good when they were healthy. Again, I mean, JJ got hurt, November or December 1st, November 30th. It was something like that. And I realized that they didn't get off to a fast start. But at that point in time, they had lost to Texas and Texas Tech. And they had some close calls, obviously, against, the Youngstown States of the world. And I understand that. But I do think that losing your best player for 7 games and then losing your second best player for the rest of the season, that has to be factored in to some degree, correct?
I would factor that in and maybe give him like 1 or 2 more wins if everyone was healthy, all things considered. I mean, if you go down the line, how many games do they realistically flip?
I think it absolutely the Notre Dame game, absolutely Georgetown. I think Wake Forest.
The Notre Dame game at the beginning of the year?
Yeah. First time around, yes.
Well, they didn't have Marcus Burton. Why are we backing
then we probably win even more.
Exactly.
Without him.
If JJ played in that game.
They had Marcus. We're going to sit here and try to give the injury excuse for not having JJ Sterling against
They
Notre
beat
Dame
him with Marcus. They beat him with Marcus Burton.
They did.
JJ.
And you just said which games do they flip?
The field was even in that first game that they
That's
played
not what you
against
said.
each other.
Yeah, Jackson.
That isn't what you said.
That's not what you said. You said if JJ's healthy, which games do it flip? Does it flip? It absolutely.
Yeah, if JJ's healthy, but then you're telling me that game, and what I'm trying to tell you is that they also had a significant injury.
I understand.
Yeah, and then when they both were healthy, they won.
And Syracuse won the game. Yes,
because they had their better player back.
You asked a question to me. I'm giving you the answer. I think they beat Notre Dame the first time around. I think they beat Georgetown. I think they probably beat Wake Forest. I mean, that game was close. It was a home game. It was right up till the end. I think those 3 get flipped, and then you don't know from there because there is momentum.
I have one last question for you. So you lose Freeman, you lose JJ, you lose Chris Bell, and Sadiq White and Anthony. Who's your next coach, and how many games does he win?
Well, I think my number one. Well, there's those top of the market guys who you just call and you let them say no. Jay Wright, for example, you just let him say no, right? I think we can all agree. You do your due diligence. You let him say no. Goodbye. All right, adios. The real guy that you would target is Will Wade from McNeese State. He's won everywhere he's been, and you know that he's not going to stay at McNeese State forever. I think it's a realistic coaching option, and I believe that even if the entire roster is completely gutted next year and you have to start from scratch, he can build a team that is capable of competing for an NCAA tournament spot in year one. And I would be shocked if by year two they are not an NCAA tournament team if Will Wade is the head coach.
So Will Wade, who was in trouble for NCAA violations and a corruption, part of that corruption investigation in the sport, that Will Wade, you think Syracuse is going to hire him?
I don't know if they will, but they probably should.
All right. Maybe it's good that there's no rules now, but I don't know. I don't know that they're going the Will Wade route. But all right, Jackson, we do have to run. Appreciate you.
Let's take we got a special caller on the line.
We do.
Now. Yeah.
Who we got?
Lazarus Sims wants to call in and talk about the current situation.
What's up? How are you?
What's going on, fellas?
How you doing?
I'm good. Listening to y'all conversation way out the way.
So the floor is yours. What do you want to talk about?
I'm just listening to the gentleman in front of me. Like, he's throwing names out, and Jay Wright and these guys. Well, Jay Wright would be great, and Patino would be great, but you got to know where you're at too. Syracuse is not spending that money.
Yeah.
And to not give Adrian 2 to 4 years to see what he can do. No coach is coming into any situation. Jay Wright, Calhoun, anybody else has come in a situation and done great off the door. And now you're carrying this with the NIL, with the kids transferring, able to leave, whether if they're playing or if they're not playing, they just see something they like and they want to go to the shiny object. Like, that's tough. So to not give Adrian that leeway and that credit that what he's working with and the monster that he's working with the NIL and the transfer portal, like, come on.
Z, obviously you played for the program. You grew up here and went to Henniger and played at SU, and you've been here a long time, and you've been invested with Syracuse basketball, and I'm sure you still watch them, game in and game out. For those who say, it's clear Adrian Autry can't coach. What is your response to? Because that is a comment we get a lot on this show. People call in, they say that or comment on that in our chat. What is your response to that?
Okay. I'll say you got other coaches that they're naming that they claim is doing a good job, or do they got just better talent? And not to say we don't have good talent. If you can go get a higher gun, a Kevin Durant, or, you know what I'm saying, or for college, these top guys, because you can throw more money at them, does that mean you're a great coach? Are you doing a great job, or you just got talent?
Yeah.
So to say that he can't coach and he's not invested in it, or what they're saying, the grass is green over here, we should go get this guy. Like, I just heard him name the gentleman, the other coach who's in the recruitment scandal on his own. Like, Syracuse is not bringing that in. Like, we do pride ourselves on certain integrities.
Sure.
So to look at that and say Adrian's not doing a great job because this guy is doing a good job somewhere that's not a Syracuse level, you got to remember that too, the level.
All right, Z. What do you make of you mentioned the talent part of it? What can Syracuse do to get there? And do you think Syracuse is capable of competing in the NIL market?
I don't think with Syracuse money mentality, the stinginess of them, of they want to get money but they don't put money out with the NIL. I don't think we can compete. You got really one of your big money donors. With this situation, with Mr. Wiseman. So that kind of puts you behind the 8 ball with that, because, again, it's not about talent right now or getting talent in, or like when I was coming in and the Billy Owens and the Derricks and the John Walls, we wanted to play in the Dome. You wanted to play in the Big East on TV. We were on TV 3-4 times a week, or, 3-4 times, within the month. We was on TV maybe 8 times that month. Like, that's a big draw. Now that's not a draw. It's the money's the draw. And if the university's not going to open their wallet, then how can you compete? You can say he's not doing a great job as coaching, but you're not opening the cabinet for him. So you can't say that if you're not going to give him the opportunity in the cabinet to go mix and match his recipe.
Z, we're up against it time-wise here, but any final thoughts? Anything else you wanted to add before we hit our next commercial?
They need a point guard. JJ's doing a great job, filling in, being a combo guard, but they need a point guard. Like, they can say what they want. We can get this player, that player. If you don't have a point guard to run your ship, it's tough.
Got any eligibility left?
You need a solid point guard.
Yeah, they need a point guard.
Since I've been home, to be honest, I go to stores in the mall. Hey,
you'd command top dollar too. I mean, you'd be in demand, no doubt about it.
Oh man, with this era, with what's going on, yeah, definitely. And it wasn't even, to me, that's the difference. The love for me was trying to be the best and getting the Big East championship, or for them the ACC championship, or getting to the tournament. Right now, for them, how can you tell a kid to go work hard and he's getting $400,000?
You see, let me ask you a question, honest question. If you were playing in the NIL days, would you have sat the years you sat at Syracuse? Or you think you would have gone somewhere else?
To be honest question, my first 2 years I probably would have left. Because my first year, I remember my first year I redshirted, and it wasn't for playing wise. I got sick going in right before the season started. And the second year he wasn't playing me, so which was my first year being a redshirt freshman, he wasn't playing me. So for me, and actually I actually my second year, and he wouldn't let me leave. So he told me no. He sat, my brother sat with him, like, you're not playing him. You saying this and that, and we would like to go. And everybody in the country, when we played him, was like, yo, if you was here, you could play. Like Calhoun, Georgetown, all of them would play against us and walk by the bench and say, hey, if you was with me, you'd be playing right now. So it was frustrating for me. So for me, I would have probably left my first 2 years. Junior and senior year, no, I would have stayed.
All right. Well, it worked out pretty well. Glad you didn't end up in a Georgetown uniform or UConn uniform and got to play in a national title game to boot. Listen, Z, it was great catching up with you. Hope all is well with you and your family. And thanks so much for coming on. And be well, and we'll talk to you anytime you want to call. Open invitation.
All right, same with you guys.
All right, Lazarus Sims joining us here on the show. Unprompted. Love hearing from Z. We'll take a time out here. Back after this on ESPN Radio.